Okay, so we can call the meeting to order at this time. We do have 6 members on right now, so we have a quorum. I can have everyone stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you everybody for showing up. Like I said, Kyle's still trying to get in, so when he gets in, he'll be in. Hold on one second, just text me. All right. If you can, Shelley, I don't know if you can try to get with Kyle and see if you can get him in, because it's asking him to like log in with a WebEx account, which he shouldn't have to do. And can you make me host? All right, perfect. Okay, first order, do we have a motion for the approval of the present agenda?
So moved.
So moved.
I think I got to move on. Shelley, did you move? Yes, okay, I got to move on Shelley. I need a second. Mike, you moved as well. Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mike. All right, all those, if you can unmic or unmute in favor of moving the present agenda, say aye. Mr. Charsky?
I can't unmic because my first name is Mike, but I still say aye.
Thank you. Mr. Heiser?
Aye.
Mrs. Palmer? Mr. Peter?
Aye.
My vote is aye. And Mrs. Urista? I think are you unmuted? You got to unmute, Mary, please.
Aye.
There you are. Got it. Thank you. All right, motion passes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the July 7th meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Mike. All those in favor of approving the minutes for the July 7th meeting, say aye. Mr. Charsky?
Aye.
Mr. Heiser?
Aye.
Mrs. Palmer?
Aye. Sorry.
It's okay. Mr. Peter?
Aye.
My vote is aye. And Mrs. Urista?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes. Okay, we'll move into the report section. Today we have 2 different reports, one on the tax rate analysis and one on the reopening of school, the update. So at this time, I'll turn it over to Mr. Genovia.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Tuttle. I would ask Mr. Tuttle, if you're able, if you could go into that attendee list. I believe the first caller with their hand up in your attendee list is Mr. Carey. I don't have the ability to unmute him. If you could do that, that would be great.
Good evening, everybody. I want to do a tax rate analysis update. We did get valuations from both Skodak and Stuyvesant, although our tax base is going up 2.2625% to $14,404,335. When we look at the number of parcels, the equalization rate, and assessed values becoming increased in both Skodak and Stuyvesant this year, we're going to realize a 1.93% increase year to year on tax bills. So below, I've given you the typical $150, $200, and $250,000 chart. What the estimated impact will be for this year. It looks like $94.37 for Skodak and $87.75 for Stuyvesant. I do want to note that Skodak had an additional 6 parcels added to the tax roll this year, and the equalization rates did not change. Skodak stays at 93% and Stuyvesant at 100%. You'll be signing the tax warrant tonight, which allows me to then send these tax rates to both counties, which will then create the bills. One other update is that for Skodak, due to COVID, they're going to do a mail-in only tax receipt. They're not going to do a countertop collection, and that's for the protection of the town employees. That information will go out both on the tax bill as well as Sean Masters, new collector of taxes, will be doing information that he'll send out as well via social media, and I believe he said the local newspaper as well. Are there any questions about the tax rate?
Any questions from the board members? Give you a second to put your little hand icon up.
Okay.
No questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All right. Let me just share my screen here with you. Mr. Tuttle, bear with me one second. All right, so I have the pleasure of presenting to the board tonight on our COVID-19 school reopening plan. So we're going to walk you through the various aspects of the plan. As you know, our plans were due to be submitted this past Friday. We were one of the 650 school districts to get their plans submitted by the deadline on Friday. There were some schools that asked for an extension and others that did not comply with that. I'm very proud of the work that our team did to get this plan complete. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about the process and the components of the plan. I would imagine that there's probably going to be some questions. I would ask, there's a lot of points for me to talk to this evening. So as I present each parts of this plan, Mr. Tuttle, if you want to monitor the chat or do random check-ins to ask for questions, we certainly can do that. So topics might seem relevant to discuss at certain points in the presentation, but we've got kind of a lengthy slide deck here tonight. So want to just remind the board about 2.5 weeks ago, we started to receive guidance from New York State. It seems like it was much longer ago than that, but the first piece of guidance that we received was from the New York State Department of Health. And just as a reminder to all of our public that is on this evening, you can access this slide deck via board docs. If you're on there, it does include the hyperlinks to these documents so that you can click right on them and they'll take you to the documents that we used to help develop our plan. So we received the first piece of guidance from the New York State Department of Health. A few days later, we received a guidance document from the New York State Education Department. The New York State Education Department guidance document was about approximately 150 pages. The New York State Department of Health was roughly 40 pages. So we were looking at about 200 pages of guidance that we needed to digest as we went through this process of developing our plan, which we were given about 2 weeks once we had the guidance to go ahead and get the plan written. In the New York State Education Department guidance document, there were areas that were mandatory requirements of the plan. Those areas are listed here as we go through the Skodak plan this evening. And I am going to give you kind of the 30,000-foot view of the plan in the slide deck. Obviously, our plan ended up being about 42 pages long. We're not going to do a page turn on that document tonight. I know you've all taken the time to read through it. I'm sure you might have some questions, but I'm going to hit kind of the highlight of each of these sections that you see here on your screen and talk to you about our plan and how we plan to move forward. So based on those guidance documents, as mentioned, we had about 2 weeks. There is a hyperlink in the plan here that will launch you to our Skodak Central School District reopening plan we put together. The first section of the plan talks about communication, family, and community engagement. As I know, the board is well aware, and many of the callers that are online this evening, since after graduation, end of June, throughout the month of July, we had formulated advisory committees. We had 4 advisory committees: communications, instructions, operation, budget, and personnel committee. And that in total, we had about 211 stakeholders represented on all 4 of those advisory committees. And when I talk about stakeholders, we're talking about students, parents, faculty, staff, administration, board members, community members. We had a wide array of individuals who took the time to meet with us. As you know, each of those advisory committees met once a week. Throughout the month of July. Communications met every Monday at 4 o'clock. Operations met every Tuesday at 4. Instruction every Wednesday at 4. Budget personnel every Thursday at 4. In addition to that, we put together a steering committee, and the steering committee was also made up of 46 stakeholders. And the idea of the steering committee was to take all the advisory committee suggestions and really leverage the steering committee as a decision-making committee. Here's all the information we have from all 4 advisory groups. And we asked the steering committee to help us make decisions based on the information that was provided and based on the guidance in the plan. As we went through the development. The steering committee met every Wednesday night at 6 o'clock. In addition to that, we've held 2 community town hall forums that have been very well attended. Each of the town hall forums we've held so far have had approximately 150 to roughly 200 participants. I think we had about 140, 150 at the first town hall meeting, had about 170 or 80 at the second town hall meeting. I would anticipate we will have more. We have 2 additional town hall meetings scheduled coming up. You can see August 10th and 17th, both at 6 o'clock. I anticipate we'll have even more participants on August 10th and 17th as folks will have questions about the plan. We'll want to hear what's going on. The intention would be to kind of run through this plan almost the same way I'll be running through it with the board tonight. So the presentation that the public will get will be very similar to the one that you see in front of you tonight. There will not be a lot of changes in that plan from this evening to Monday. I do need to extend my gratitude just an outstanding commitment on behalf of, roughly 260 participants in this process to give an hour every week and sometimes even more to this process. Very thoughtful, digested data. There was a lot of reading. There was other things that came along with participating, and we're extremely grateful. It was an outstanding showing of community support, and not only for our schools, but for our students in greater communities. So very proud of the process, and it really helped. I think for any member of the advisory committees or member of the steering committee will certainly, hopefully, will see that their voices were heard as we infused the input that we received as we formulated and put together our plan. So the gist of the communication and family and community engagement section really does talk about expectations and safety. You're going to see coming up prior to the start of school, once school starts, we're in the process now of working with our communication specialist to put together what we're calling public service announcements. We have a requirement to help educate the community, not only on things that revolve around safety, such as respiratory hygiene or hand hygiene. Those are requirements of plan 2. But also we want to communicate to everybody as school gets a little bit closer the logistics. What's it going to look like? How do I unload my child at the beginning of the day if I'm a parent drop off? What's it going to look like when they get off of the bus? How do I pick up my child from school? We want to help educate our community on logistics. We're looking to do that through probably a series of videos that we will put together that we can then repeatedly send out and keep on the website for reference to help inform our public. You will see there are certain protocols that are required as part of the plan in this section. It does go on to talk a little bit about personal responsibility and procedures. I've said this all along. We know that in order for us to reopen our schools and allow students to come back in safely, it is going to take the effort of all of us. It is not just going to be through administrators and teachers enforcing regulations. It's going to take all of us together as a community to make sure that we are communicating with our kids and we are all complying with the regulations and the guidelines that are set forth so that we can ensure everyone is as safe as they possibly can be if we're allowed to re-enter school and at the beginning of September. The next section talks about health and safety. It seemed to make sense to me to name myself as the COVID-19 safety coordinator. There's an email address, covid@scodac, that anybody can use with any questions about compliance or safety. Those emails will come directly to me and Shelley so that we can manage and make sure we're getting back to people in a timely fashion. Doesn't mean other folks are left out of the loop on that, but I would be the one, at least initially, to take questions and concerns that anybody might have regarding compliance to the plan. So that was necessary to name somebody. So I am your COVID-19 safety coordinator. And this was probably the most lengthy section of our plan, which makes sense when you think about it. The health and safety section is going to be important. We had to go through, and in our plan, when you take the time to read through the plan, you'll see that we talk about required signage, the importance of having a communication plan, tracking logs, our responsibilities that come along with suspected or positive COVID cases and COVID tests, how we're going to manage facilities entry. Because when you think about health and safety, it's not just about a pandemic, right? We have over a couple of capital projects and moves, we've, for lack of a better term, we've hardened our facilities, right? We have single points of entry and check-in. We have provided some extra safeguards in each of the buildings to try to keep our facilities as safe as possible. So facilities entry is still something absolutely important for us to keep in mind as we look to reopen our schools. And we recognize we can funnel kids through a main entry point, but maybe we can't do that safely during a pandemic. So, there is a possibility we would be using multiple entries. We're not quite there yet to begin communicating what that would look like. But if we do have multiple doors open, it is required of us to make sure that they are still secure facilities. So we need to man those and have individuals there that are ensuring that individuals coming into the building are doing so safely and they are welcome visitors to the building. This section also talks about our requirements for daily screening, social distancing, personal hygiene. As you know, we've talked about daily screenings. That's a real challenge for schools, not only in Schodack, but across the state of New York. Everybody's kind of handling daily screenings a little bit differently. The Department of Health and the State Education Department both encourage the screening process to take place at home prior to the start of the school day. So we have decided that is something we are going to do. We are in the process right now of finalizing a software program and a package that we can implement and utilize that will allow families to go on and report the results of the screening at home for each of their children. It will update in real time so that we'll be able to track who has taken a test, who has taken the screening and who has not taken the screening. We will then make sure that upon entry to the building, we will cross-reference and verify that no child is entering the school building that has not had a screening. So if they failed to take the screening at home and we see that they show up at school without a screening, mom or dad is dropping off and they show up, we will have screening stations set up and available to conduct the screening on site before allowing students into school. Part of the caveat here is the school bus. So if it's being done at home, we will not have monitors and screeners on the school bus. It's actually discouraged from doing that. The school bus will get to transportation in a little bit, but if there is no screening taking place at home and district transportation is being utilized, a child could get on the bus without a screening, but they won't be allowed school entry until we verify that they've been screened. So as mentioned earlier already, it's essential that parents do their part, play their role. We'll continue to follow up if that happens. We're also looking at what do we do in the event that you have power outage or the internet's down, and how do we go about conducting screening appropriately that way. So a lot of logistics to figure out in terms of the screening, but we're going for the home screening on a regular basis with a software program that parents will learn how to access, and will be able to easily enter that every day. You've heard a lot about social distancing, 6 feet of distance in all directions for students in the building. We're no different than probably what you've seen on the news, and you'll start to see some pictures come out here shortly as we begin to ramp up towards September. But classrooms don't look like the classrooms they did when we left in March. We're taking out a lot of personal belongings, any kind of furniture with soft fabric, rugs and carpets, when they're able to come out, should come out. And really, we're trying to maximize the space in the room for social distancing. So all of our students will be required to remain socially distant to the best extent possible. We recognize that the younger students get a little more challenging that is, but desks will be set up to keep them 6 feet apart. And we want to, again, remind everybody that it's not just about student safety. We have all of our faculty and staff returning that we want to ensure their safety through this process as well. So social distancing is a requirement. In conjunction with that, we have to be mindful of any kind of movement in the hallways and make sure that if we are entering the building at the same time, we're making sure we're always walking to the right in whatever direction we're walking. There are markers on the floor to help kids understand how far 6 feet apart is. And we are trying to limit passing traffic on stairwells and those things to try to keep distant. We are requiring the use of masks throughout the course of the school day. Masks are going to be required to be worn at all times with scheduled mask breaks. And we've heard all sorts of things. I understand there are families and individuals who don't believe that that's right to make their kids wear a mask all day. There are others that insist because of safety, they want masks worn all day. I've said this all along. I think we make decisions based on the best interest of health and safety, at least initially. We get moving through this process. We see that we're able to do it successfully. We understand what makes it successful and safe. We continue to do that. And at all points in time, based on updated information and data, we will begin to, if we can lessen restrictions, we would love to be able to do that. But until we feel that we can do so safely, we feel absolutely obligated to do our best to protect every child. And respect the wishes of their family at home in terms of keeping every child safe, and we respect our faculty and staff and want to keep them safe. Personal hygiene, we're going to do a lot of hand washing, and we will take scheduled breaks for hand washing and ensure proper hand washing before and after we eat. There will be hand sanitizer placed in every room and in common areas throughout the building. We have a lot of wall unit hand sanitizers like you would see, where you run your hand underneath and, the hand sanitizer comes out. We've installed those in all of our classrooms. You will see hand sanitizer throughout the buildings. And we will continue to not only schedule times for appropriate hand hygiene, we will also continue to post signage around and educate our community on the importance of that as well. In this section, it also goes on to talk about visitor and vendor practices. Visitors, unfortunately, we are restricting the the visitations to the buildings, and we're talking about essential visitors only. So who is an essential visitor to the building? If we have, you know, a safety issue or something's going on, we have law enforcement or first responders, obviously they're essential. If we have medical personnel or Department of Health or other folks come in, they're essential. But again, for the safety of all of our students and faculty and staff, we're restricting access to the building to visitors. All of our vendors, of course, we have, I won't bore you to tears with the process with that, but any vendor coming to the building will do the best we can to conduct business outside and not inside of our school buildings. But there are times when some of our vendors need to come in and they would be required to follow our screening protocols to be screened to gain entry to the building with a temperature check and answering questions. And then same would hold true for any of our vendors. They'd be required to face mask and stay socially distant while inside of our buildings. We go on to talk about trainings for that are required. It's pretty extensive. So if you go back through and you take a look, there is a whole host of trainings that are now required for screeners, for staff, and for substitute teachers. So we will be scheduling a training session for substitutes prior to the start of the year. They know they need to be familiar with regulations and rules, and they need to know how to keep themselves safe. So that is something that we will be sure to do. The plan does go on to talk about how we look at utilizing all of the space, and we look at the capacity of our space to really help drive some of the decisions that come up later in the plan. You will see that at Castleton Elementary School, you know, when we think about kids and classes being contained to classrooms that are typical teacher classrooms, that's no longer the case. We have to use space all throughout the building for instructional purposes, and rooms that might have been assigned as art rooms or music rooms or old gyms or cafeteria will likely be turned into instructional space so that we can host in-person programming. The nurses station has to be defined. We do have to have isolation rooms in the event that a child comes and the nurse believes that a child might be symptomatic. We do have to have isolation rooms, not only for any children, any visitors to the building. If they're essential visitors or any staff that might become symptomatic late in the day, they feel their throat hurts, headache or fever, any of those things, the nurse will work with that individual. They would be placed in an isolation room awaiting pickup or departure from the building when it's safe to do so. And then we have protocols that we have to do to make sure that cleaning and disinfecting takes place appropriately. It also goes on to talk about ventilation, cleaning and disinfecting of the building. Those are all listed and in there for what we are going to do. One of the big pieces that we've received questions on are the MERV ratings of the filters at school. And our school buildings were not designed for high-level MERV filter. Matt and his team have gone through and they have upgraded. I believe we have a MERV 7 filter. We have to be very careful if we up the ante and we put high-level MERV filters into our filtration systems and into our HVAC systems in the building. We do run the potential of damaging our systems because they're not meant for that type of filter to be on there. So Matt and his team, we talk about a protocol for regular checks and filter replacements as needed. But again, we are working with the scope and have appropriate filtration on our ventilation systems. Again, this section will go on to talk about protocols for suspect or confirmed cases of COVID, which include contact tracing and then return to school protocols, right? Because we have kids that might go out. How do we know it's safe for those individual students to come back into school? So we have our return to school protocols that are listed in there that give some guidance on how we will go about handling that to ensure that students are able to return. All right, I have quite a few more slides to go. Mr. Tuttle, can I just ask, are there any questions? I can't see the chat window the way I'm set up right now. So can I just take a quick moment to ask if there are any questions on either of those first two areas?
Sure, I've been monitoring the hands, so it looks like Mr. Trotsky's got a question, so go ahead. Or no, wait, I'm sorry. He just doesn't have his video on. I'm sorry. There's no hands, so I think there's no questions at this point.
Okay.
I have a quick question. I
Yes,
have
sir.
one question. Jason, and I raised this in my note to you yesterday, so I just want to get an idea. Under what circumstances, if any, would there be a test performed, a COVID test performed in school? Would the nurse do that, or is that something that we would refer out for?
We actually would not conduct any of that testing at school, and we're being told that that is not something we want to get in the business of doing. I know the governor has recently made some statements about testing for students and faculty. Actually, the guidance that we're receiving would be to work in conjunction with the Department of Health to arrange for any testing where individuals would go and work through the county at specific sites to receive tests if they felt that was necessary. They would refer folks out for that testing. In the event we have any suspect cases or as part of our plan, we would reach out to the health department specifically, and we have a feeling we'll be on the phone throughout the course of the year just to get clarity. But the health department will be working hand in hand with their schools regarding any sort of testing. If the schools were to conduct any kind of testing, we would have to go through and actually apply to be like a mobile laboratory for tests. And there's all sorts of issues with how that's done safely and appropriately. And we're just not set up to do that. So the guidance is use your county Department of Health and work with places that are already set up to conduct tests if they feel any tests are warranted, but the County of Health would probably dictate that, not Skodak Central Schools.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so let me go on here. So the next section of our plan really talks about facilities, and I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this particular section, but what I do think is important for the board to understand is the emergency response protocols, shelter in place, hold in place, evacuations, lockouts, lockdowns. Those are all still required and will be expected to be conducted. So one of the things that we have made very clear is that when we practice emergency protocols, we are not going to put our students or faculty safety in jeopardy by, for instance, during a fire drill. What we do when we drill for safe exit of the building is the bell rings, we want everybody out as quickly as possible. We will probably not worry so much about time while we are practicing. What's more important is students need to know how to get out and where to go safely so that we can account for every child in the building. So we might stagger rooms so that we've got one class going down the stairwell at a time. And usually in a normal fire drill, we're 2 by 2, different classes going down the stairwell and funneling out of the building at the same time. Because it's a drill, we will not put anybody's safety in jeopardy. Now, if it's a real fire, we're going 2 by 2 down. We're going to prioritize what's the bigger safety risk here. So if the building's on fire, we're going to use good common sense, and with our masks on, we're going to get out of the building as quickly as we can. But anytime we are practicing any of the drills you see listed here, we will do so through verbal communication, potentially through video showing, point out areas that students need to be aware of and recognize what they need to do. If we can move students there safely, we will do so. And we will talk about the difference between a drill and a real emergency. And we do that anyway. So our students should know the difference between a drill and a real emergency. So we will, by regulation, continue to conduct those drills, but with some changes this year.
Jason, Mary's got a question.
Yes, Mary?
Well, it was on the last slide, but there is, just so that you're aware, I just saw this recently, there is a move afoot by the legislature to do the random testing in the schools. So just to keep you aware of that.
Sure. Yeah, I did hear that. The guidance from NISCUS that I got, our statewide organization, you know, we got to remember what we got into the business here for. We don't have the capacity to do that. If we were to become a testing site, we probably wouldn't be conducting any of those tests with any of our individuals. Again, we would probably work with the Department of Health to arrange that if necessary. But we have no intention of doing that unless it is ordered by regulation that we do it, and then we will follow whatever guidelines we need to do that. But I will tell you very honestly, sitting here today, I am not investing an ounce of energy in prepping for testing at schools unless we're ordered to do that, and then we will, because school attorneys and everyone else are telling us to stay away from that at this point in time. So if it's ordered by law or regulation, we will work with the right entity to do that. But we don't consider ourselves trained or to have the capacity to be able to do that. I do appreciate that, Mary. I was aware that the Senate subcommittee met with representatives from the state education department earlier this week, and that did come up as a topic for them to talk about. And again, the governor has mentioned it a couple of times. I will tell you, school starts in a couple of weeks. If they're going to make that decision, I would appreciate a little bit of time and notice to try to get that figured out if that's the case. But we're going to just try to figure out how to get kids back into school safely for the time being. So I'll jump back into the facilities section. And what becomes important in the facilities section, I've had some individuals reach out and say, hey, can we put tents up on school property? And we can utilize, because we are encouraged to be outside. So teachers are welcome to take their kids outside. They can sit further than 6 feet apart. It's a great, opportunity for them to take mass breaks outside and do that sort of thing. But we actually no good deed goes unpunished here. If we wanted to put a tent up, you can't just put a tent up. It's temporary quarters. And as such, you would have to go through a permitting process through the Office of Facilities Planning. And in some instances, you might even need to engage the services of an architect to make sure that it's installed appropriately so that it is safe for everybody to be in. So we can't just throw a tent up, out there without going through that process. And we do need to make sure that section really talks about our understanding with compliance with the building code as set forth through the state education department. So child nutrition, we've talked a little bit about, Chartwell's has been a great partner in child nutrition. And during our shutdown in the spring, we had Chartwell's and a team of folks from Chartwell's and some of our own staff would come in regularly, and we would do grab and go lunches. And I think at the high point, we were a little over 100 or so breakfasts and lunches every day. At the low point, we were probably down around the 40s. But we are required to provide food service, obviously, throughout the course of the day, breakfast and lunch. So this section describes who people can contact for applications for free and reduced lunch programs. We will be promoting that information as well, encouraging families who think they might qualify for that. Even if they're not sure, we encourage people to fill out those applications for free or reduced programs. But we are also, we want to make sure that appropriate safety measures are in place for food prep and while eating. We have to identify the locations in which students will eat. At the elementary school, students will be eating in their assigned classrooms. At the junior, senior high school, we will still be using the cafeteria. We will likely use some gym space and potentially some auditorium space as well for students to eat lunch in. We can't just have one group in the cafeteria, have them leave. We would need to clean and disinfect that area. So if we do use the same space, we need to provide adequate amount of time in between cohorts coming in to eat in the same space so that it can be cleaned properly to ensure safety. And then again, we talk about the importance of proper hand hygiene and the availability of meals to off-site students. So as you know, we have an optional remote instruction choice for some of our families that might feel better about not sending their kids back to in-person school. So, or we might have some of our students that are have compromised immune systems that will be full remote. We still are responsible to provide breakfast and lunch to them if they should choose to need it or want it. And so we will continue the use of grab and go. And in some cases, we certainly will work with families if there is an issue with delivery and they don't have access during the day to get to school for a pickup. We'll take those on an individual case-by-case basis and work with families to ensure that they get the food that they need. Any questions on that section?
Go ahead, Mary.
Make sure that I'm off. Okay, so the plan seemed to indicate that we were responsible for providing the lunch. Will the students be able to bring their lunch or not?
Yep. Students can still bring their lunch. Yep, they absolutely can bring their lunch from home. What we can no longer do is have them share food, right? We can't swap something in our lunch bag and trade with somebody else. We can't do that. They certainly can bring their own food from home. It's not a problem. Yes, so they can still bring their own food from home.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Next section is transportation. So transportation is going to be certainly challenging. Many of you might have seen that a survey went out today. We are starting the process of asking families to help us plan by indicating whether or not they will require the use of district transportation. So I'll get to that a little bit more in just a moment. But this section of the plan talks about density reduction strategies and how we are going to have students be seated on a bus. It becomes really important for us in terms of asking our families to cooperate and provide us with the information on whether they need transportation. So what our survey indicates is we ask if a family feels they'll need district transportation in the morning. And then a second question asks if they'll need it in the afternoon. A perfect example is the Chevier household, right? I get up in the morning and I go off to work. I usually bring my kids with me, but at dismissal time in the afternoon, I'm usually engaged still with work. I can't pick my kids up and take them home. So I am a typical one-way bus transportation for my own kids. The New York State Health Department and SED do encourage during the pandemic, if parents have the ability to drive or walk their kids to school, and they encourage them to pick up their kids at the end of the day. And that's done to really try to limit district transportation, reduce the density on the bus for those individuals that really need to rely solely on district transportation. It's certainly a personal preference. We're not going to say no to anybody. If you say you need it, we're going to provide it for you. We're not going to verify that you do or do not need it. But if you have the flexibility in your schedule and can elect to drive or walk your kids to school and pick them up every day, we are encouraging families to do that. What will go away as part of this is the ability for a family to call and say, hey, I went shopping, I'm running late. Can you send Johnny over to my, his friend's house on a different bus? We're not going to be able to accommodate those requests due to the fact that we're going to have assigned seats. We're going to limit capacity on those buses. Right now we're planning for one student per seat. We're looking at the seats being a barrier. Families from the same household will be required, students from the same household will be required to sit together in the same seat. We will have markings on the seat for where kids will need to sit. And we will do our best to maintain the most appropriate social distancing that we can on the bus. As that survey goes out, we are asking families to be mindful of their schedules, and if they need it, again, we will provide it. If something happens, if I elect and I choose to opt out of district transportation in the morning and the afternoon and my circumstances change, we do encourage folks, it's okay, call up the transportation office and say, hey, next week my schedule is going to change. Give us as much notice as possible, and we will do our best to accommodate. If a bus isn't full and we can make that accommodation the next day, we would be happy to make it the next day. But if the bus happens to be full, that might require us to reroute other buses and switch ridership of buses and change routes, which isn't overly easy to do, and it takes a little bit of time and communication. That could change somebody's pickup time or drop-off time, and there's a lot that goes into the communication of that. So we are looking, we're in the survey, we're telling families that we would be happy to try to accommodate, but it could take up to 2 weeks for us to get that figured out. So as soon as you know of a change, let us know, and we will do our best to accommodate. Again, this section of the plan really goes on to talk about how we will clean and disinfect the buses. Again, protocols for reported cases of COVID, requirements for students and families taking advantage, again, some of the safety requirements that everybody will be expected to comply with, required training for the transportation personnel, again, communication plans on what's happening on the routes and ensuring safety. If we need to communicate any changes, we want to be able to do so clearly. Talks about routing, loading, unloading, pickup, drop off, and then our requirement to transport to BOCES. What I will say, which I think is important to publicly announce, in the past, the buses have been areas where kids will get on the bus and sometimes they feel like they don't have to follow the rules everywhere else. We might be turned around and leaned over the seat talking to the student behind us or change seats while the bus is in motion. We're constantly reminding kids about why it's important to follow those safety protocols in normal times on the bus, but bus behavior will be monitored very closely. And if a student is unable to comply with the rules or can't follow safety guidelines, they put the health and safety of all the passengers at risk, and we have to just be mindful that that can't be tolerated. So we want to make sure that kids understand that for their own safety, it's important when they're in their seat, they're staying seated, they follow directions for boarding and unboarding the bus, and they're doing their part to stay socially distant and away from other students. Any questions on transportation?
Yeah, Jason, Chuck. So just, I think you made it clear, but in the surveys, as you're asking, if a parent opts out of or opts to drive their students to school, they just then the receipts normally reserved for those students are no longer going to be necessarily guaranteed the next day, is what you're saying. Due to your requirement to reduce density on the buses, they just can't willy-nilly decide today I'm going to drive in, today I want them to take the bus. They kind of have to make a commitment as to what how they want to proceed to get their kids to and from school.
That's absolutely correct. And the reason for us doing that is once we hit that capacity on the bus of one student to every seat, that bus is full. And so if I'm electing to drive and I need my child to take district transportation, if that bus is full, that presents a problem on that route. So that goes back to my earlier point, Chuck. We're happy to try to accommodate, but it might take us taking 2 streets from one route and putting them on another bus that isn't at full capacity to try to create capacity on a bus that is going through that section. And so that takes time and coordination and communication with families, because it could be the difference of, my described pickup time is, 7:04. And with that change now, maybe my pickup time is 6:55. And what does that do to my morning schedule for whoever that is? And we don't want to inconvenience parents too much, but we also want to try to accommodate. So we're gonna do our best to try to accommodate. It's just going to take us a little time to get that straight.
To that regard, if it turns out you have a large percentage of parents opting to send their kids on the buses, and it starts to look like we have a situation where we're not going to be able to maintain distance on the bus. You know, kids from the same household can sit together, but if you have, you know, a bunch of the household sitting their kids and you have to pull kids out of seats, is any plan on if you're going to have to add bus routes or if you're going to have to stagger start schools? Or, I mean, has that been a discussion at all on how that would be handled?
Yeah, we've talked about actually all of those things, and we recognize that the plan that's submitted, for the community to review, I think takes all those safety precautions first and foremost as a priority. But we don't know until we get the data back that says, this route is going to be full. That gives Rhonda and Kathy in the bus garage the opportunity to look at certain routes that might seem to bus capacity, and then shift a typical route to another bus that might be routed to an area right next to that one, and change some of the pickup locations. So if necessary, and we indicate in there that we might need to stagger start and end times of the day, we might need to add additional runs in order to accommodate, but we won't know that until we get the data back, which is part of the reason why it was essential that survey went out this week, so we can get that data back we're asking for the survey to be back by next Wednesday. So then, we can go through and process that. But I will tell you, in terms of transparency, we absolutely could be looking at staggered start and end times to the day. Or multiple bus runs, if necessary. We don't have enough information to know that for sure just yet.
Appreciate it. Understand it's all fluid and just a little bit of clarification. Thank you.
Yes, sir. You're welcome. Any other questions, Mr. Tuttle, on transportation? I can't see everybody. Okay, we're all set. Oh, see, there's another.
Yeah, I have a quick question, Jason, it's Shelley. It's, filling out the survey can be tricky if you're kind of unsure of the kid's schedule, right? So if you've got children in multiple ages with multiple different schedules, but your work schedule is going to require you to be in your office 1 or 2 days a week, the logistics of this thing, it is a moving target, but what the survey is filled out this week or next week, once parents understand the schedule, are we going to have time to shift that when they realize what kind of shift they're going to? I know you said you need a 2-week turnaround to kind of work logistics out, but.
Yeah, it's a good question, Shelley. What I would say, our conversations with Rhonda and Kathy is right now it's such a moving target. So we need to have some idea. What I think we would really be looking for in the survey are for those families that know for sure I can drop off and pick up. That's a non-issue. My schedule's flexible enough, or grandma's around, or somebody else that, as a caregiver that can do drop off and pick up. If people are able to do it and able to help, that is going to be super beneficial to us. We do recognize, I think when you do the survey for, the morning is usually like, you probably know I could drive my kids to school or I can't drive my kids. So I know AM. The afternoon is a little more fluid because kids, 2:25 in the afternoon is right, during working time for parents. It's a little easier at the beginning of the day to get them. So there is an option, I think, on there that if you select that you're going to need district transportation, it opens up into another window that says, I think my child's going to need to go home. I'm anticipating using Castle and Kids if they're operational. They're going to go to another address, or I'm not sure yet. I think that's an option in the afternoon. So we recognize that that's, going to need to be fluid for folks, and we're going to have to take those. We will probably have to send something out directly to those individuals as the school year gets a little bit closer, but we need to begin that routing because we're like, so we feel behind in everything at the moment. And so we get started in that direction, and then we can at least build a foundation with what we know, and it'll give us a sense of what those routes look like based on the data that we have, and then we can fine tune it as schedules get put in place. So I hope that helps answer your question. Any other Mr. Tuttle. You're welcome.
Nope, I think you're good to move on.
Okay. Social emotional well-being. I got to tell you, the deeper we're into this, the more important this becomes. I look at my team, who we have been working, and it seems like it's, we go from a marathon into a sprint and back into the marathon and back into the sprint, and it's going 100 miles an hour. And we absolutely positively have to make sure that we're doing the right things to take care of ourselves and to take care of our students as we begin this process of returning back to school. When you look through the SED guidance on social emotional wellness and well-being, it really talks about prioritizing this section, not at the expense of academics, but it talks about the importance of taking care of kids, taking care of your faculty and staff, really rebuilding relationships, and understanding the importance of those human connections and getting kids back in. We already know from day one. Here we are 5 weeks in, I believe, to our in-person summer school program that we have going on. The first couple of days of summer school, you could see some kids were a little anxious coming into the building. They've been with mom and dad and probably haven't been interacting too much over the last 4 or 5 months. And now we're coming back into school with teachers and everybody looks different. And, I'm getting my temperature taken, all of these things. Making sure we are taking care of our kids becomes absolutely essential. Not only our kids, our faculty and staff who, will come back and will be at a wide array of places. Our faculty and staff who might be taking care of folks at home, might have a loved one who has come down with COVID, might have endured some kind of trauma throughout the school closure, might be anxious and nervous themselves coming back into the work environment. And how do we make sure we are doing everything we can to support the social emotional wellness of our students and our staff? So this plan indicates that at the recommendation of the state, we have started the formulation of a social emotional learning advisory team. We have already invited all of our counselors to connect. So we have school psychologists and social workers and guidance counselors, all trained counselors in both of our buildings, have reconnected with Mr. Bennett, building administration, myself to talk about the tasks that lay ahead. And again, they will be the core of our team, but we will be inviting a variety of stakeholders to take part in that learning, social emotional learning advisory team. And their purpose will be, just as it states, to really look at how are we monitoring and monitoring everyone's mental health and social emotional wellness, and then providing ideas for doing these things that help us stay social emotionally well. Again, our focus will be not only for students and faculty and staff, but I think we do a tremendous job here at also providing resources to families. The school, people lean on the school. We're trusted individuals in the community that families can come to us and tell us they're having challenges. And we work in confidence and with those families to remain confidential, to provide access to resources and help them get the things they might need to take care of themselves at home as well. Again, we're going to leverage our strengths. As you know, mental health and social emotional learning was a new addition. We talked about that at previous board meetings. That's a new requirement. We have a couple of programs and frameworks we use in each of the 2 school buildings. Very proud of the work that we've done there, and we're going to leverage the strengths of those programs as the foundation to supporting our students, faculty, and staff. And along with this will come training for individuals. So we need to talk with teachers about how to recognize signs of distress in students, and how to talk to kids about being back together. So we will collectively be doing all that prior to the start of school and ongoing as the school year continues. Any questions on social emotional well-being?
I think we're okay. For board members, just to make this move a little more smoothly, when Mr. Chevier asks if there's a question, if you have a question, just unmute and go ahead.
It's really a chance for me to get a drink of water, so I like stopping and asking. Some of these sections I'll be able to go through a little more quickly, but the school schedule really starts to get into the meat, I think, of what really people are interested in. In just a few minutes, when we get to the teaching and learning section, I'm going to invite the building principals to hop on and kind of walk through the different models. I think it's important. They spent a lot of time and effort and energy working with the instructional advisory committee and the steering committee to kind of formulate the plan that's there, and I would like them to speak to that in just a minute. This section really is very small. Actually, the student schedule section really talks about how the district plans to provide any type of in-person instruction if it's allowable in September. And so we describe how we're going to do that. And it also describes the optional full remote instructional model for parents. So we recognize that for those students that are staying home, because their parents are concerned about sending them back and they have the ability to stay home with them, or they have a compromised immune system, they're in a high-risk category. We will provide the optional full remote model for parents. All the instruction will be provided by certified teachers. I will tell you, we have looked and are teaming up with the component schools in our BOCES. In the event that we don't have a certified teacher, we might be able to leverage certified teachers on remote instruction in another district that might be able to work and provide instruction to our students. So when you think about like the elementary level, our teachers are primarily certified either K-6 or 1-6 for elementary instruction. But when you start getting to the high school, certifications become pretty specific. So, we don't have a long list of business teachers or tech teachers or chemistry teachers. So if we do have students that are in the upper grades that elect to take the full remote option, we talk right in our plan very openly about we will do our best to match kids up with teachers from their home district, but we are looking and thinking creatively about how we provide high quality experiences with teachers from within our BOCES to be able to provide that instruction to students. So if we can, we will, but we might be inviting students from other districts to be instructed by our teachers as well. So in order to do that, we don't have all the staff to be able to do it. So we do feel we can leverage that appropriately. We talk about attendance and chronic absenteeism. I won't spend a lot of time here other than to let the board know that attendance and engagement are two areas that are required by the state for us to track this year. So it makes no difference whether it's an in-person day or a remote day. Attendance is expected to be taken and engagement is expected to be tracked. So the SED guidance does go on to talk a little bit about our ability to be somewhat flexible. Again, I've used this example in the past. If I've got a high school student who has two let's say first grade brothers and sisters at home and mom and dad are working, and the high school student is kind of responsible for watching out for his little brothers and sisters during a remote instruction day. It might be really challenging for that student to log on and do remote instruction. But what we need to do is make sure that we're flexible and offering opportunities for that that student who really wants to be engaged but just can't be due to family circumstances, to not be punished for circumstances that are kind of out of their control. So the flexibility on our end in terms of having recorded lessons or things where the student can then go back later in the day and watch it and engage with the teacher a little bit differently to show that they're still participating and doing what needs to be done becomes important in this section. Again, if we do see red flags with students not showing up or being in school, we do have teams that work together to work with families, and we provide interventions, and we want to identify those students early so that we can intervene and try to make sure that they are attending and participating to the fullest extent possible. And again, a lot of this is done through a positive school culture and engagement, which I think we all feel very proud of. We think we have a very positive culture in our schools. The hard part is kids haven't been in school for about 6 months by the time we return. So we need to work harder to ensure that kids are recognizing that they're part of something special. And we need to continue to build that culture to encourage engagement. Any questions? I need a drink. That's why I'm asking. All right, we're getting there. Technology and connectivity. We've talked about this throughout the last few months as well. We have continued to ask about technology needs, and we continue to try to stay in touch with families. We're required to do that as part of the plan, continually monitor our families' ability to access technology, whether it's through device or internet access. We were very proud of our work that we did in the spring to be able to connect with families and provide hotspots if needed, so that they could connect on devices. We have some families that have multiple students in the home who needed additional devices in order for their kids to participate appropriately. We were able to provide those devices as well. We do encourage, the use, if families have devices at home that their kids can get onto, we do encourage and recommend that parents continue to, allow access to those devices. Shouldn't come at the cost of mom and dad not being able to do remote work from home. But if there is an extra device that the kids can use to engage in, it's certainly helpful to us. I will tell you, we ordered about 200 Chromebooks. We put an order back in May. We still haven't received those Chromebooks yet. It's a lot like PPE. Once everybody needs to get their hands on it, even in regular updating and ordering, devices are still a little challenging to come by. So we do feel we're in a good position to provide families the support that they need, but much like everything else, we're asking for help. If you have a device at home that you don't need for work because your work supplies you a computer and your child can use a home device, then that's helpful to us to leave the devices at school that can be available for everybody else. But if you need one, you need to, we'll work with families to make sure that they have what they need. Along with that becomes training opportunities for our faculty and staff, and looking at ways to improve virtual and remote instruction. And then, of course, it goes without saying, we know tech support is needed at times, and hardware repair will be needed at times as well. So how do we go about repairing and providing replacements to any of our students or families who might need some support in that area? All right, so here is the next section, teaching and learning. As we kind of wind down near the end of our plan comes the stuff that really everybody wants to hear about. I'm going to just kind of set up the principles here, and then we'll invite them in to talk a little bit about this section. But in this particular section, we do talk about, again, you'll see communication is a key piece of that runs throughout our plan. So we will need to continuously look for ways to inform our community, and we talk about specific ways we are going to do that. We will need to continue to, we have offered a survey that went out today that indicates the intention for in-person instruction or the optional remote. I would assume that some people are waiting for their ability to be able to elect that. Others might have questions, and we'll work with families to help get a sense of how many students will be actually returning to the building for instruction. That's essential for our planning, as we're looking at approximately 10 to 14 students per room. We really need to know who is going to be remote and who is going to be coming to in-person instruction so that we can plan class sections appropriately. Again, it talks about professional development and identifies instructional priorities, assessment and grading, which we don't have the details on that just yet. We do talk about traditional grading systems and things that are in there. We know there was a lot of questions in the spring on the quasi standards-based grading system that we used, but I can, the board should rest assured knowing that many of the districts throughout the region did very similar plans to what we did, and we didn't make that decision absent of conversation with college professors and research about how colleges would handle standards-based reporting or pass-fail options that some schools used for students in the spring. We know that those aren't overly helpful in helping understand how children are progressing in school, and so we want to make sure that we are utilizing a system that is easily understood and allows everyone to know how students are progressing. And then we go on to provide details regarding in-person, hybrid, or remote instruction. And so I am going to take a much needed break, and I am going to invite Carrie in. James is not with us this evening. James is on his way. He's got a medical appointment down in the city that he has to go to. He's on his way down there. He's probably there tonight. So we're going to ask Carrie to kind of jump in and speak to the elementary piece here. So Carrie, why don't you go and take it away?
All right, thank you, Mr. Xavier. Good evening, everyone. I hope I make James proud here with our explanation. This has been a long 4 weeks of planning, and we've really worked K-12 to come up with an instructional plan that covers a lot of different models of instruction. So we had an advisory committee that really helped shape much of what you heard from Mr. Xavier and from what you'll hear from Jackie and I tonight. And the primary goals that we had and developed with our stakeholders, and our group had about 70 participants, K-12, parents, students. The goals were really obviously number one, safety for all of our students, our staff. That was really, when we were evaluating all the models, we kept that at the forefront, and the guidance clearly talks about social distancing, keeping 6 feet, social distancing, and also keeping small cohorts together. And that's for contact tracing purposes, and obviously to limit the amount of students and teachers that children would come in contact with. So that was at the forefront of much of our decision making. Like every decision just had to come back to that. And, we feel like we've come forth with some good ideas that keep that as number one. Equity was a really important piece of this as well. A lot of great conversations with our instructional advisory committee about accessibility to instruction, all of those support services and accommodations that kids need, whether they have IEPs, 504s, they may be in various categories, English language learners, students who are at risk, maybe they receive some interventions in reading or math, or some support with counseling, some kids that we know need support when we were in remote instruction in the spring. We want to make sure we give accessibility options and extra attention to those populations who may need that. And consistency, communication was huge throughout all of our surveys and our conversations. We talked about, needing a consistent communication tool, scheduling, students, families, staff members. It was really apparent that, we did a good job, and we turned it around really quick, in the moment in the spring when we needed to go into remote instruction. We were really proud of everyone, but we know we can do better. And we know that there were some things in place that, we didn't have in place that we, now that we've had time to think and plan, that we can put into place. So you'll hear about that in our plans. And then last, programming. We still want to aim to provide a high quality instructional program, obviously as safely and effectively as we can. We all know that, the best instruction is our kids in front of us, and that's what we ultimately, know is best, but we have to be safe, and, we're learning a lot about how to effectively engage students and in a distance learning model, and that's part of our professional development. So Jackie will talk a lot about some of those offerings and electives and things that we are still trying to maintain in our program, even though we know that there are some barriers there. So those were our main goals. This is a lot of text, and I apologize, but it's kind of 43 pages is just one little snapshot of it. But our in-person model, I guess in the building, we have two models really happening. Our goal was to get the youngest learners in person as much as possible. That is straight from the guidance document. That was what the recommendation was to prioritize younger age students in at-risk populations. So, with that, we went into the building, James, myself, Mr. LeClaire, and I know Jackie and Perry and the team over there did the same thing and went room to room. And we really looked at our capacity. What could we safely put in each room and abide by the 6-foot social distancing. We even had a metal frame Mr. LeClaire built us, and we went and we counted how many squares we could get in each room. But we were very mindful in that. We didn't just want to crowd every room as tight as we could. We made sure we allowed room for students to walk, come out of the bathroom if there's a bathroom in the room, kind of the flow for the staff members as well, make sure they have a safe distance when they're teaching. So we were just really trying to be mindful of, making sure we could safely put a number of students in each space. Our classrooms are different sizes, but it was pretty much about 10 to 14 students in rooms for regular classroom size. But we have other places in the building that Mr. Chevier talked about with, some of our innovative learning lab space, our art room, music room, band room, the small gym, the cafeteria we're not going to be using for lunch. So we planned to get K-3 in person every day, 5 days a week, by splitting them into smaller cohorts. So you take a class of 22 and you say 11 will be in one room, perhaps 11 might be on the other, and one teacher and a team of professional teaching assistant and some other support people may also be part of that plan, will work with that group in 2 separate spaces. That's one option that we have. And then the other option is to put a cohort into a larger space, like let's say the band room, and you can fit more kids in there. So it might be more kids in that space with a teacher. Those are the spaces we were thinking were going to be for our inclusion classrooms, where we have co-taught 2 teachers in those rooms and sometimes teaching assistants as well. So we kind of had to go around and place them on the map and figure out where each classroom could go. And that's based on the number of students in each section. So the students, again, would learn primarily from their classroom teacher. They would be doing the first instruction. And then we would use our teaching assistants and support providers to help reinforce, to do some of the independent work, to do some type of a conferencing or small groups if we can work that out just in a distant way. So that's what the instructional piece looks like. We're keeping them in their classrooms, and the teachers are the ones that would be moving back and forth. So that's helping with our cohort model of keeping kids together and not having kids moving about the building. They would eat breakfast and lunch in their classrooms at their desks, which would be separated out, so they could take off their mask, have snack, have breakfast, have lunch, and obviously there would be some cleaning routines in there as well. Mr. Chevier talked about wearing masks at all times, and we are requiring that, although we will be definitely putting in mask breaks for kids. We know that our littlest kids and learners are going to need breaks. So we're going to be realistic about that, but we are going to be stringent about it as well, because it's a safety issue. And just like on the buses, we are going to have expectations for students to be wearing their masks when it's time to wear your mask, unless it's a mask break or time to eat. Kids, if they take them off, they'll be in a place where they're away from other students. And we're working with our teachers to kind of put those parameters in place. So just kind of moving down, all of the bullets here that have a star next to them, those are going to be consistent across the models that I speak of for CES. So breakfast and lunch in the classroom, and then movement about the hallway is limited. We're going to have signage. Mr. Chevier spoke to that. Special area classes. We're going to be pushing those into each classroom cohort, so that, again, limiting that kids leaving the classroom and going to another place where we would have to then clean and disinfect and have cross-contamination happening. We're trying to limit that. So, the art teacher would come in, do her art lesson in the classroom, and work off of a mobile cart and bring it to the kids. If we can get kids outside, we're going to do that as much as we can to use outdoor space and get them moving. PE will be one of those specials where if we can get them outside, we're going to get them outside. If we need to do PE in the classroom, we can do PE in the classroom. We have, a lot of ideas for how we can get them up and moving, but the best case scenario is to utilize the outside area. We may have some potential to use our large gym. At this time, we have not scheduled class in there. It's a very difficult place to have a class because of just the acoustics of that room. I mean, the big gym is huge. It can be partitioned off, so we may use it flexibly for some other things that we may need some space for. But it's potential that we could have a small group in there and separate them out by 12 feet, because that's what the guidance says for physical activity and for singing and playing instruments. You have to be at least 12 feet apart. So the gym is an option, but we're going to prefer to get kids outside if possible. And then grades K through 12 will be using a learning management system that will really allow for all stakeholders to have access to one platform where we're going to organize our learning resources, the content, the schedule, where assignments would be housed and also shared back and forth with parents, student, teacher. We've been looking at a couple different options and think we found a good solution that we'll be rolling out soon. And we're really excited about the ability to have one place for everyone to go and find what they need, whether it be the assignments, the grades, the feedback. It's a much needed thing that we're looking forward to. I'm sure many parents on this call will be glad to hear that. We're just going with that. All right, hybrid learning model. So now the K3 is in person every day. Grades 4 through 6, we don't have enough space to put grades 4 through 6 in every day. So our plan is to have 50% of the students attend in person 2 days a week, and then 50%. So Monday, Thursday would be and then the second group would come Tuesday, Fridays. Wednesdays are really going to be a flexible day. We're going to get in all of our special education students who need continued services and also some support services, related services like OT, PT, counseling, various things that we don't want to pull them from. If they're only going to be in the building for 2 days a week, we don't want to pull them from their classes. So we're going to try our best. It may not be perfect, but we're going to try our best to limit the amount of pullout during the instructional times and provide that on Wednesdays. We can also use that time to bring in students who need extra support. You know, if the at-home learning is you know, not, you know, working well for a particular student, we have an option to, you know, have some time with the teacher on a Wednesday. So, you know, we're still working through the logistics of that with transportation, but more to come on that piece. Okay, virtual learning days. So on the days when students are not in the building, so if you're a Monday, Thursday person and you're home on a Tuesday, you would be expected to participate in all remote learning activities and complete the assignments that your teacher puts on our learning management system for the child, and the parents would have access to this as well. The activities and expectations are going to be, you know, more than they were in the spring. We're hoping to have a very similar structure schedule. Now, we know kids can't sit in front of a computer for 5 hours straight, but we definitely want to provide, you know, more lessons and instruction that kids can access, whether it be, you know, a video that the teacher made and is posting on the site, or projects that they're working on with specific times. So we definitely are going to be we're going to be more planned out with the remote days for those students who are on the hybrid learning model. Their teachers will be teaching though. So that's the thing that's tricky, is that the teachers are going to be in person with the other cohort. So the students at home would need to be able to do their work remotely and access it through that learning management system. We're going to teach them how to do that. Hopefully, if we're in person, that's going to be one of our first goals, is to teach routines, teach how to get onto those systems and how to access you know, those resources online. And then, of course, attendance, Mr. Chevier spoke about. We will be taking attendance on both on-site and virtual days, and we will be assessing and grading with, you know, flexibility and understanding of the situations that, you know, our kids are facing. We understand that, and we will work with kids and families, but we definitely have to have accountability during this time.
Let me just jump in real quick. Mr. Tuttle, can we ask if there are any questions for Carrie at the elementary level? Carrie or myself? We won't leave you hanging there by yourself. I'll help you.
Sure. I've let the board know if they have a question, they're just going to unmute and cut in.
Okay. All right. So nice job, Carrie. Thank you very much. Let's jump in. Are you taking this, or is Jackie jumping in?
I can start it, and Jackie can jump in and add the part for the high school. This is the all remote learning model, and Mr. Chevier spoke a little bit about this already, so this is kind of a refresher. But if students elect to have an all remote learning model, we would provide a schedule and a routine that would closely align to what we're doing at school, but may or may not, depending on like the instructor and what Mr. Chevier spoke about with potentially utilizing outside, you know, with Questar with teachers. So it's possible that it may not be the exact same thing that's happening in the building, but we'll do our best to try and give kids those same opportunities to, you know, have engaging certified teachers who are teaching the lessons, and a structure and consistency. It's going to follow the same model where there's participation in all the learning activities, and assignments would need to be completed and turned in. They would have attendance taken, work would be graded, and participation and effort would also be assessed as well. Jackie, do you want to add anything about how it would be different from a high school perspective?
Yeah, I think it's important to note when we talk about all remote K-12, we're referring to being told we have to go remote. So it's not this format is not necessarily choosing the remote option. This is more if the entire building had to go remote. for us, and I'll talk about our schedule, but we would really follow the same schedule we're doing in our hybrid model, would stay consistent for students and teachers in the remote model as well. So expectations will always stay the same, and our direction to teachers is, even if you're in person with students, prepare them for class norms in a remote environment, because really we saw it in March, it could happen overnight, and so we want to be prepared for that switch. But overall, the expectations will stay the same, and really, more than anything, we aren't going to be crisis teaching like we were in the spring. We're going to be teaching, and regardless of where we are located, we're expecting our best from our students and our teachers and our staff. So I'm just going to kind of jump into the model, the hybrid model at the junior senior high school. It's a little more complex in the sense of certifications for teachers and all the different class selections for our students. We are looking at providing smaller cohorts based on class selections. So you're looking at forming groups of 10 to 12 in a cohort, and we're going to start with in-person learning, focusing on the core subjects of math, science, social studies, English, and foreign language. And then when it's possible to fit into that schedule in person, we'll offer some in-person electives. It will not be the same for every cohort. Some will have their full day be core classes. Others have a little bit more openings, like your seniors might have more opportunity for electives in their schedule than an 8th grade cohort, for example. Our in-person instruction will be with some teachers, but not all. On opposite days of learning, our remote classes will be taught, which will primarily be elective courses. And our students will be expected to do the additional work for any core work during that time as well. Carrie already talked about the learning management system to support consistency and communication. That's something we're working really actively on right now. We're expecting students to engage in remote and in-person classes. We've met with all departments for the most part, a couple left, and the message is the same. Be ready to teach in either model and prepare for the shift and for students from the very beginning. There was a little bit of concern about electives being remote and students dropping certain courses. The expectation stays the same as if we're in person on a normal year. We're expecting students to maintain the minimum number of 5 classes plus PE within their schedule, unless there's outstanding circumstances which are determined by guidance and administration. It would follow the same model as CES, where 50% of our students would attend on Mondays and Thursdays, 50% will attend on Tuesdays and Fridays. Wednesdays will be when we provide support to our CSE students, ELL, and any students at risk for failing. The goal would be start small and work our way up if we can safely offer more and more in-person learning. We're one of the few schools looking at this approach at the secondary level because it's very complex to try and do small cohorts. A lot of schools are looking at 50% being a large cohort. We're really trying to make smaller cohorts within that 50%. So it's a challenge. Our guidance team is stupendous and working through the challenge, but it doesn't leave a lot of room for changes. So we're working hard to get it right on the first try.
Thanks, Ms. Hill. Ms. Froscher, great job. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to hop in and let us know. We appreciate all the hard work. Again, the building teams have been working tremendously hard. As Carrie mentioned, it's been a K-12 effort. We've spent a lot of time together reviewing ideas and recognizing that we need to be consistently applying program between the elementary school and the high school for a variety of different reasons. So great team effort, a lot to be proud of with our team. They've done outstanding work. Now it's time to start making this a reality and come to life, which as you have heard from both Carrie and Jackie, there is still a lot of logistical work left to be done, even in terms of scheduling. So kudos to the team, a lot to be proud of there. So let me move on. We only have a few slides left, thankfully. I know this has been a long presentation, but it's a big plan. And so I think it's important we take the time to go through each piece. Career and technical education. As you know, we do have a percentage of our student population that participates in CTE programming. A lot of that is done through our BOCEs. That you know, could be ranging anything from a nursing program, criminal justice, automotive, New Visions. There's lots of different programs that Questar provides that our students can take part in. And we understand the value that career and tech ed brings to some of our, to enhance the experience of some of our students. So we want our students to participate to the fullest extent possible. Questar will continue to provide in-person experiences as they were intended and designed. And it's important to note that all safety guidelines will be required to be followed. So our students will, for bus riding to CTE programs, they will need to follow guidelines. And once they attend those programs, the BOCEs will be doing similar things where they will be limiting cohorts, socially distancing, and mask wearing as well. We talk about athletics and extracurriculars. As of today, athletics is still postponed until September 21st, and as was discussed in the guidance document, we're waiting for more guidance to come out on athletics. So what we do know for the fall is there will be no regional or state championship for fall sports. And what NISFA, the guiding force in interscholastic athletics, has proposed that they might move to 3 seasons starting in January if it's possible and safe and they get permission to do so safely. But you can see what our 3 seasons would look like here on the screen. They would be approximately 10 weeks long. We recognize there's overlap. That's not a SCODAC decision. That is a NISFA decision in terms of how those seasons run, which provides challenges to student athletes who might participate in multiple sports. And it presents a challenge to some of our coaches who might coach multiple sports. So we will figure out those logistics as they're presented to us if we do have the opportunity to move forward with any kind of interscholastic athletic season. We recognize how important those experiences and opportunities are to kids. If we can do it, and we're told we can do it, and it's allowable with safety precautions, whatever safety precautions need to be in place, we will do it. That's our mantra, but we just need to make sure we do it safely. So we're just waiting to get the green light to move forward with the planning of some of those things. Extracurricular activities, important for the board to know. We recognize that those are important aspects of the student experience and life in our schools. They will be virtual at the start of the year. As you've heard Jackie mention, you know, some of the challenges, even with transportation, like we won't be having after school clubs and activities meeting after school with late bus runs. We're just not quite there yet. There's logistically too many things to figure out, and recognizing our requirement to try to keep cohorts as small as possible. We don't want kids from multiple cohorts then getting together to take part in a club or activity after school. It increases risk to exposure. So we're going to start the year with virtual extracurriculars. You know, we are in the process working with faculty right now at kind of hashing out what are, we have advisors for all the activities, but when you look at some of the extracurriculars, such as intramurals is an extracurricular. It's a little hard to do intramurals virtually. What we can do is continue to push that down the line. If we can do it at some point in the year, we will. But if it's not safe to do that at any point in the year, we might not be able to offer that extracurricular to kids. But if we can do it, we will do it. So if we can do yearbook, we will do it, but we will begin to do it virtually, and we will meet virtually, and all the advisors will have to follow the same requirements and guidelines that they would typically do in an in-person setting. Special education, this section of the plan really kind of talks about equity and ensuring access. You've heard us talk a little bit about some at-risk populations of students, and we know that some of our special ed populations, require accommodations, modifications, assistive technology. There are other things that they need to help level the playing field to offer a quality school experience and an educational program to this population of students. So this goes on to talk about ensuring that they have access to resources and ensures opportunity, that all the accommodations and modifications are being met. Goes on to discuss parent engagement and open communication with families, compliance with the Committee on Preschool Special Education and the Committee on Special Education, that's CPSE and CSE, those acronyms. Those are mandated groups that need to get together to make decisions on a student's individualized education program. So we do have compliance and responsibilities we need to follow, and this section goes on to talk about that. You've heard the building principals talk a little bit about that alternate schedule, that AB hybrid schedule, and our ability to provide some additional support on Wednesday afternoons. This section goes on to talk about bilingual education in world languages. As we know, we reduced Mandarin Chinese as a course offering to students a few years back. We have one student who is in her last year, Mandarin 4, who we're continuing to support in that. All of our other students engaged in foreign language right now are taking Spanish. There were some opportunities for sign language through distance learning, but primary focus in world languages is on Spanish currently. This section also goes on to talk about our English language learners and the requirements to make sure we are providing the necessary resources. So English language learners are those students where English is not the primary language spoken in the home. We do have several students that English is not their first language. So we have a set of standards and guidelines that we're required to follow when working with our English language learners to ensure that they have access to the program and we are meeting their needs appropriately as well. So this section describes our requirements and how we intend to work to ensure that those students get what they deserve. All right, so staffing, teacher and principal evaluation system. As of the time of this plan, it is required that we move forward with our approved APPR plan. That presents a whole bunch of logistical challenges in and of itself. The APPR plan, as you may recall, was suspended this past school year. There was no requirement for scores for teachers or principals under the approved APPR plan. We are being told that we should be expected to move forward with our APPR plan this year. There are some challenges with that, again, in terms of doing observations. Yes, we can do online observations, but they're a little different than what we've done in the past. We always want to make sure that folks are treated fairly in the process because they're getting scored and getting rated on their professional practice. And so we haven't worked in this ecosystem very long to make sure that everybody is comfortable, and we're still trying to work out a lot of the kinks. So in addition to that, there is a score that's generated. Right now, we use the average of several Regents exams to apply part of that score to get a score for teachers and principals. And as you know, those exams did not happen last year, and we still haven't heard whether or not they will happen this year. We have already mentioned that certification, all teachers should hold a valid and appropriate certificate, except where it's allowable. That just assures all of us that, as you've heard the principals talk about, I might have a teacher in one room and a TA in another room, but that teaching assistant is not responsible for primary instruction. They're there to support the teaching and learning of a teacher, but they can help reteach or provide support in a variety of other ways, and will supervise and help kids with work. And they might rotate, but at no time will the teacher assistant be responsible for direct instruction of students. Nor can we take a PE teacher and plop them into an elementary room and tell them to teach elementary school math, science, social studies, etc. They have to work within their appropriate certification areas. We will continue to allow student teachers. We want to be mindful that it's a professional responsibility that we all feel passionately about, help bringing the next generation of teachers. We feel we have a lot to offer student teachers at Skodak due to our educational system that we have built over the years, and due to the positive culture in our building. So we love getting student teachers in. We have to work with them a little bit different. We got to be mindful that if we have a full classroom and student teachers come in, they might not be able to be in the same room, at least initially, but we will look to build in opportunities for in-person instruction and leverage their support and work with kids virtually. It's a reality of the world we're living in right now, and we feel we can provide those opportunities to student teachers. So that brings me, I believe, thank goodness, to the last slide of the evening. And so this last slide really talks about, so what happens next? Where do we go? We've got this massive plan. As you can see here, there's unfinished business, and the board and the public and parents need to know. We work tremendously hard to get that plan in place, but now logistics and details really need to be flushed out. We put it in the plan because we feel we can make it happen, but we might not be able to answer every single question that's thrown at us in terms of detail, because we're just not there yet. We're, as you've heard tonight, we're in the process of building schedules. So it's hard to answer a scheduling question just yet when the schedules haven't been built. We feel very comfortable and we know we can do it, but we submitted the plan Friday. Everybody would have liked to have taken this week off and taken a deep breath. We've been hard at work getting scheduling and logistics figured out. Staffing is another issue. We do recognize and know we have to provide accommodations to some of our staff that are in high-risk categories. So we are working on connecting with our staff that might need those accommodations so we can, as we plan, we know who will be able to be present in the building, who won't, if there are additional accommodations that are needed. As you've heard Mr. Peter mention tonight in the question, do you need extra bus runs? Well, we just may. We don't really know that yet. Do we need extra cleaning staff to be able to handle what happens during the course of the school day? We may. Do we have enough support to supervise kids appropriately during the day? We feel we do have enough support, but once all those details are figured out, if we need additional support, we'll look to figure out how we're going to do that. We know we don't have a limitless pool of money and resources. So we're trying to be very mindful about each and every possibility when we are looking to potentially add staffing. We have not done a lot of adding at the moment, but we recognize we might need additional cleaning staff at different times of the day, or we're going to be flexible and change their hours because we might pivot the evening crew who usually comes in right at the tail end of the day to maybe stagger them to come in a little bit earlier because we won't be using our facilities for continuing education or outside resources to come in and use the gym for basketball. Our goal is going to be to keep that facility as clean as possible to run and operate the educational program for our kids. That will be something that we will be very mindful of. Logistics for drop off and pickup. Again, transportation schedule, professional development. There is a ton of training, communication. And then, of course, I say the best for last. We will wait for any changes from the governor and direction out of the state in terms of what we need to do. Again, we know the first week of August, he is supposed to announce, are we able to be in person? If we're remote, a lot of these logistics will still need to be flushed out from when we're ready. But if we're remote for the first month of school at order of the governor, the details on pickup and drop off aren't necessary in the next 2 weeks. And so that will really dictate a lot of what happens. But in the interim, we're moving forward right now with the thought that we will be in our in-person / hybrid model come September. Flexibility, understanding, and patience. We're all human here trying to develop a plan to get kids back safely. I think, again, I can't stress enough, very proud of the team, but we're going to need to change the plan. It's going to have to change, and we will need to communicate any changes to the plan. But they were designed and built that way, not only in Skodak, but for schools around the state of New York. So I appreciate you listening to us go on for quite some time tonight, but probably nothing more important for the board to understand at the current moment than kind of the intricacies of the plan that was developed. So I'm happy to take any additional questions that anybody has at this time. Again, thanks for listening.
Anything from the board? Well, Jason, I'm going to say thank you, obviously, to you and your team for that work. That was a pretty lengthy document. We appreciate the fact that you got it in on time. Keep Skodak off of any negative lists. So very appreciative of that work. I think we also realized that, the plan's not going to make everyone happy. We understand that. I think if we put safety first, and I think we need to start at the highest level and then adjust as the year progresses. I think we're in the right direction there. I think we also realize that the plan is fluid, and there probably will be changes before the actual first day of school. There's still more work to do. All right. So if there's nothing from the board, we're going to move into the next section. All right. Right. This time we're going to open up the public comment for the public who are out there who have stuck in for this these reports. I appreciate that. What we can do is, I believe, I'm not sure if it's *6 or *3, but I believe one of them will unmute you. So if there is a comment from public, if you could go ahead and do that, I will see that you've unmuted and I'll call on you.
Mr. Tuttle, I do see a member in the attendee list with their hand raised. I'm not sure if you can unmute that mic or not. I don't think I have the ability to do that.
I think that's Brian.
Oh, okay. Tell Brian to put his hand down.
Let's see if he heard us. All right, here we go. The hand disappeared. All right, we're good. So I don't see any mics that are unmuted. Of course, that doesn't mean that it hasn't worked. So at this time, I have to check. I'm going to unmute the entire group and just let me know. I wish there was a quicker way to do this. Did we figure this out time we were out, whether *6 mutes and unmute? Shelly, you're nodding your head. We did this, right? All right. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do what I just said I was going to. We're here to a lot of things right now. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and close public session at this point, and we're going to move into the next section, which is the district building.
I don't saw Mr. Tuttle, but Mr. Ryan typed in the chat that he tried to unmute his
Did he?
microphone.
No, I did not see that. So Mr. Ryan, did you try *6? Did it not work for you? I'm looking at the chat. So Tim, if you can. Tim, I just unmuted you. Are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes. You've been trying *6. It's not working?
I tried unmuting from my computer.
Oh, okay. You've got the floor. Go ahead.
All right. Well, again, I'm not sure who's on, but my name's Tim Ryan. I'm co-president of the Skodak Faculty Association. I'd like to welcome new board members, Kyle Hersey, and welcome back board member Mary Arista. Two familiar faces, which is nice. I'd also like to thank Jason for working with the Faculty Association, as well as all the groups that he's been putting up with for the last month. And again, we've had to work collaboratively to get to a better place. Again, very difficult times. No one's used to working in these conditions. But again, we're trying to do the best we can, with kids in the district. And again, please keep reaching out. Our guidance counselors have been doing yeoman's work. So again, hats off to them. But again, keep doing what we can. Please let us know how we can aid. And again, we'll keep working through this as best we can.
Great. Yeah, thank you, Tim. We appreciate those comments.
Yep.
I'm stuck right now to wonder if there's anybody else that wants to make a comment that can't unmute. Okay, let's try *3. I think this is what we figured out the last time. If you hit *3, it will let me know that you'd like to say something, and then I'll unmute you, and then you can speak. So I'll give a second here for anyone who is on the phone to press *3. Okay, so I'm not seeing any hands. So I'm going to go ahead and move on then. We're going to go ahead and close public comment for this section. It will come up again, and we're going to move into district updates. So Mr. Chevier, if I could have you.
Oh, good. I get to talk some more. All right.
we missed you.
I'll try to make this this section quick. Again, you'll see listed in the public content section of this report the oaths of office that were filed for the record. We have those listed there for everyone needing to file their oath of office for their new terms. I wanted to mention to the board, you'll see two documents attached underneath. Right now, I am working with the Faculty Association and the leadership team to look at a potential change to the district calendar. What we are talking about doing, as you've heard tonight, we developed the calendar prior to knowing where we would be in the fall. And so one of the things we want to take a look at is right now, the current calendar indicates that the first day of school with students would be Wednesday, September 9th. What we are considering doing is taking another superintendent's conference day from either November or March. You can see there are two conference days, one in November, one in March, moving that up to the 9th. It doesn't really make good sense to start our first day with students on a day in which most of our students are going to be virtual or remote. So the idea would be to move a conference day up, give our faculty and staff another day of training. There is a lot of training that is required at the beginning of the year, give us another day to prep, and then look at September 10th as the possible first day with students on an AB schedule so that we could come in Thursday, Friday, and have the weekend to reevaluate a possible in-person opening. So I share that with you tonight, just recognizing I'm not asking you to authorize that change. We bring that back to the August 20th meeting and make that change official. but I wanted to at least make you aware that we're looking at that as a possibility for you to approve at our next meeting. I wanted to mention, you'll see coming up in a later section, you've probably seen when you looked at appointments, we said goodbye to Ruth Gregoire, who was a secretary down at CES for 28 years. And I know I've had the opportunity to mention to the board, Ruth trained me very well when I came in as the elementary principal 16 years ago. I enjoyed my time working with Ruth. You're going to see an appointment for Regina Mayer to take Ruth's spot down at the elementary school. We're very excited and happy for Gina. She's a tremendous asset for us down at the elementary school, and she is going to do a great job down at CES. I share with you, we have posted for Regina's position, but as her previous position, and as discussed with the board, before we go ahead and fill that position, I want the board to know I'm taking a look internally to see if we potentially can maybe make some moves and provide support down at the elementary school a little bit differently instead of just rehiring for that position, as we've talked, and recognize the fiscal condition that the state is in and our opportunity. Anytime we have an opening, we're reevaluating. This can be no different. So we're looking at the staff we have available, and before we just hire somebody new for that position, we're going to look at some possibilities there. So I would hope that by the August 20th meeting, we can make you aware of any changes that might occur as a result of that. So we recognize the importance of having those positions down there, and they help make the building go. There's no doubt about it. So just stay tuned. I'll keep you up to date and let you know what's happening there. But we're going to really reevaluate our current staff and see if there's maybe a creative way to move some folks around to help out down there. So stay tuned. We'll let you know where we're at. So that's all I have for tonight. Thanks.
Thank you, Jason. Mr. Churchill, question?
So the enrollment report, what's the question I'm going to ask, Jason? What's the enrollment?
Kindergarten.
Yes.
Kindergarten.
Yes. What do you got?
Gary, you remember our exact number at kindergarten? Last I knew, we're right around 50.
Yes, that's correct.
Last time I think it was 43.
Yeah, I think we're right around 47 last time. We're high 40s. I think we've got a couple of more, but we're really kind of holding steady right around 50. Which really, this is, if we're going to have a year where we've got 50 registered, this is a good one to have 50 registered. It's helpful.
It actually helps us too with our not needing as many sections when we split out into the smaller groups. We didn't need as many sections of kindergarten as we do the other grade levels. So they are smaller.
You're muted, Mike.
Mike, you're still going to run the 3 sections, right? Or you can just run 2. No, you can run the 3, right?
Well, it's going to look a little different. We've got about 10 or 14 students per room. So I would say yes, probably 3 sections, but it's going to look more like 5 or 6 sections. That makes sense, Carrie, or no?
So it's actually going to be 4 because we can take the inclusion class is going to stay together as a group, a larger group, and they'll go to a larger space. And then what's left can be split into 3 smaller sections. So it's not just a double when you split them. It's actually just more based on the class sizes. So if 20 kids are in the inclusion space and there's 30 kids left, we can put those into 3 other rooms, or, whatever the number may be. So it actually did reduce the number of classrooms and teachers, assistants that we need.
Thanks for setting me straight, Carrie. I appreciate that.
And thank you for the answer.
Okay. Are there any other questions on the district updates? Questions, comments on the board? Okay. I'm going to move into board discussion. As you can see on the agenda, we've got 2 topics for board discussion. The first one is resuming in-person board meetings. So I just wanted to have a conversation with the board about coming back into in-person meetings, obviously with the mask and social distancing, of course, but doing so before school starts. So if there's any comments out there, if you go ahead and give them to me. My thought on it is we should come back before school starts. We have 2 more meetings before the start of school. That's the 20th of August and the 10th of September. Obviously, if anyone is not comfortable with coming in, you can log in virtually. We'll still run virtual just like we're doing now, except that we will be in the same room. The idea behind that is that we're bringing the faculty and the students in. So I don't see a reason why we don't come in. I also believe that we have better depth of conversation when we're in the same room together. So let me throw that open for comments now. We don't have to make any decisions right now, but at least have a discussion.
This is Mary.
Go ahead, Mary.
So the 10th is the potential first day of school. So us going back on the 10th is coincidentally the same day that Jason was just mentioning school starting. So
Correct, unless the change comes to the schedule as he was discussing, then I think the first day of school would be at the 14th or something like that. Am I correct?
No. He said the 10th. He just changed it again on you because last time he discussed that professional development, it was possibly waiting until the next week, the 14th. Right now he's talking about the 10th.
Ah, okay.
Okay.
Then
So that's
thank
the
you.
first step.
So we don't have the second meeting. It's really the 20th. That would be the advice meeting.
That one or the 10th, this day of school starting.
Sure.
So, and I still think that's acceptable. Plus the guidance was they extended in person, the remote
To the 4th.
to the 4th. So.
Correct. Okay. Thanks, Mary. Any other thoughts out there? Okay. So, Chuck, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I'm comfortable coming back on the 20th if that's what you want to start in-person meetings again. This is our second month up at the county. We've been meeting in person, and it's still obviously closed out to the public, but I think we have more at the school to spread out and socially distance than we do at the county, and we've been getting along okay. So,
Okay.
And I'm okay with it.
Thank you. Okay, so let me think about that. I'll come back to everybody in a separate email. All right, second item is the 2020 NYSBA Summer Law Conference. I believe Kyle and Mike Heiser attended that virtually, so I think Kyle's gonna give us a quick rundown on what's pertinent to us.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so on July 21st and 22nd, I attended 2 half-day summer law conferences. The first day was more focusing on COVID-specific issues. So, safety measures, right? Are they appropriate to contain the virus in reopened schools? Are we going to be able to protect our students and staff? And then there were a couple of other topics of discussion that I'll talk about in a minute. The first session that I just mentioned was a very general session about safety measures. And I kept thinking to myself, it was about an hour session. Along the way, I was thinking, I've seen a lot of this before, and I thought that was a real testament to our administration and our discussions that we'd been having before, because all of the recommendations that were offered by the presenters, who were all three of them were school attorneys, were very active in school law. So all of their recommendations were things that we had talked about, right? So social distancing, having some combination of social distancing, masks, barriers, keeping students in cohorts, staggering entries, having multiple entries, utilizing classroom spaces for lunch. So that was one aspect that really made me happy to hear, right? That we were kind of on the right track, that we had been doing everything well so far. Just to back up a little bit, there was a lot of guidance, right? Particularly from the state, right? From the state ed department, from the Department of Health. Of course, our number one job is safety, right? We have, as a district, we have a duty of care, and when we violate that duty of care or don't live up to it, then it can have potentially disastrous consequences in multiple contexts. So we have to look at how to avoid potential injury. Of course, we've carefully studied guidance. We're in the process of applying it. Again, most guidance are things that we've already been doing. They're not laws, right? So the guidance is not particularly, it's not statutory. It wasn't established by a legislature. However, it does essentially establish a duty of care. So we definitely need to be mindful of that. What else? Excuse me. So different aspects of facilities needing to be altered, right? There was a lot of discussion about special education, which I wanted to tackle in a couple of minutes because that was an entire session. Discussion about what happens when somebody tests positive, which we've been discussing tonight. Some discussion about working from home for our faculty and staff for whom that would kind of be a possibility. Right, there are some situations in which it may be acceptable for faculty and staff to have some kind of accommodation, and that can always be discussed, I think, at the administrative level. And then lastly, for this first session, just really emphasizing communication at every step. I think we've been doing, we've been trying to do that very well. The big one for this first day, I think, was the special education. So, of course, we have the responsibility to provide a free, appropriate public education. And the concern is that students who were utilizing special education services, by virtue of the pandemic and maybe not being able to attend school in person or through some transition process, maybe had lost out on some degree of opportunity. I don't know exactly what that degree would be. It would probably be different for each student. And districts kind of have the obligation to compensate for those services, and they are aptly named compensatory services. Now, they're not necessarily one-to-one. So if I'm a student who utilizes special education services and I missed out on 30 hours of service, I'm not necessarily entitled to receive 30 additional hours. Basically, what I think we have to do is look at the projected progress of the student. So what would their position be but for the shutdown? Where would they be normally? Where would we expect them to be? And then where are they now? What's their actual progress? And then the compensation would basically be to make up the difference in that progress. And there are procedures that surround the determination process. NICED has issued guidance. It was brought up that there's kind of broad flexibility when determining what the appropriate remedy is. Of course, it would be appropriate to use progress monitoring data. And, all of this kind of exists in the context of reduced staff and budgetary constraints. So to some extent, there has to be some creativity, some flexibility, and just a couple of suggestions that were made. Assigning students to existing programs, possibly increasing class sizes where that's appropriate and feasible, pooling resources, and using teaching programs, student education programs possibly. And it was also brought up that it's difficult to determine exactly what is necessary to compensate. How exactly we need to go about that. And some were suggesting having a meeting for each student, who the district thought may have lost out on services. But then there was also a discussion about almost having students who did not utilize services in the past, who, as a result of the pandemic and not having been in school for several months, now actually needing to be compensated for some service. I don't really know, where we would fall in there. Again, I think it would be different for each student. And obviously we have professionals who are consistently monitoring students' progress. I just wanted to make the board aware of these issues and what could potentially be coming down. So in addition to that, there was a third session on the first day about collective bargaining, which unfortunately I was able to stay for a little bit, but I had to leave in the middle of the session to attend to another obligation. On the second day, was more so, well, of course, this was my first summer law conference, but from what I gathered, the second day was more like what the previous conferences had been. So the first session was about new Title IX regulations, and I was able to gather all of the PowerPoints and outlines from across each session. And I believe, Mr. Tuttle, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe I sent them out.
You did. I posted
Okay.
them up on the shared drive for the board.
Okay, great, thank you. So those are available. This is this is a 5-minute rundown of a 6-hour combined meeting. So again, Title IX regulations. There were some changes at the federal level that we need to be aware of. There were several examples of case law over the past year that were brought up. I don't know about necessarily going into each one, but it's definitely it's very good information to look at, particularly this first session on the second day. All about different reporting responsibilities, how the regulations or how the changes in regulation affect the process, making sure that all parties are treated equitably, ensuring there are supportive measures for the procedure. Then there was there were the last two sessions in this second day were all about school law, of course, but they were really more about new statutory regulations, and then kind of a year in review of court cases and other rulings. Again, there's a ton of information that I could go into here, but I think it was most important to bring to your attention the safety concerns from the first session, the special education concerns from the second session, and then Title IX from the first session on the second day. So that was, a 5-10 minute rundown of a 6-hour meeting. So were there any questions or
Did you find it, obviously it's new to you, but was it informative?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, more information is rarely a bad thing. So it was good to have the opportunity to kind of discuss these things on a larger level with people who practice. Actually, every single session was led usually by 3 people, but in some instances there was one person. However, every presenter was a practicing school law attorney. So it was, information coming from a very reliable, good source.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Great, Kyle. I appreciate that. Thanks for sitting in on that for us and then bringing some information back to us. For any of the board, if you don't know where that is, if you go into your Google Drive, go to the share folder. There's a Board of Education shared folder out there. You'll find assorted documents in it. There's a folder out there that has all those documents in it. Okay, so let's move into section 6, which is for us tonight is policies. So, due to the current unrest in our nation and the pending, probably most likely contentious presidential campaign and subsequent vote after that in November, the BOE thought it was prudent to review our policies on student expression, how the district handles divisive topics such as politics, religion, race, gender, etc. So we asked Mr. Chevier to take a look at our policies and give us a recommendation this evening on if there's anything we'd like to do with those. Mr. Chevier?
All right, I'm on again. And thank you, Kyle. I appreciate that. I was in attendance for both of those days as well. Thought that was a great summary of what was learned, and we appreciate you making the connection to stuff that we were talking about. So thank you for reiterating that fact. It's appreciated. So I wanted to kind of connect with the board. As Mr. Tuttle said, we're certainly venturing into probably some of the most politically charged times that many of us can remember I think the use of social media and all you need to do is turn on the TV controversy seems to be channeled in our faces pretty regularly. When the board kind of gave me this task of reviewing policy and taking a look and talking about how we handle that, there's a few different items that I think first and foremost need to be addressed. So I think I've worked with this Board of Education for a long time. We recognize and value the fact that our community, just like our Board of Education, comes with a wide variety of viewpoints and perspectives, values and morals, and folks come with their own beliefs and thoughts. And so part of the real challenge, I think, and the strength of having a 9-member Board of Education is you have 9 members of, different perspectives that are asked to come together and try to make sense of how to meet the need of a wide array of viewpoints and opinions. Truth be told, when we look through our policy on what are the guidelines that are there for dealing with divisive issues, we don't really have a lot in our policy that deals specifically with divisive issues. I will tell you, board policy 4513, which is a great policy for the board to take a look at. We'll actually, we've got some policy work we're expecting to do tomorrow and send some stuff out to the board. But I would encourage the board to look at 4513. 4513 is funny enough, it's library material selection. And it's probably the closest we come to talking about the importance of, I think, what the board is looking to get after in this, with that question. In the actual policy 4513 on library material selection, you can look, there's 6 items right in the middle of the page. It's about a page-long policy. But it talks about providing information that will enrich and support the curriculum, taking into consideration the varied interests, abilities, and maturity levels of the students served. That's number 1. Number 2, provide information that will stimulate growth and factual knowledge, literary appreciation, aesthetic values, and ethical standards. Number 3, provide information that will enable students to make intelligent judgments in their daily lives. 4, provide information on opposing sides of controversial issues so that young citizens may develop, under guidance, the practice of critical reading and thinking. Number 5, provide information representative of the many religious, ethnic, and cultural groups and their contributions to our American heritage. And number 6, place principle above personal opinion and reason above prejudice in the selection of materials of the highest quality in order to assure a comprehensive collection appropriate for the users of the library. So when you look at those 6 items in a policy that already exists, quite frankly, I think that can be applied across the board to any instructional setting that we have. It doesn't stand out that way buried in a library's material policy, but what I would recommend that we do, because I think it's an important message, especially during this time. And as I know, we've talked to the board about instances in the past where we've had, educators that are using their school accounts. Chuck made mention of it, I think, at our last meeting, where, I might have Twitter followers as a teacher and I like a political viewpoint or perspective or retweet something. And if it's connected to my school account, I am kind of using my stature, and I'm kind of influencing my political bias by doing those things. And I think as educators, we do have to be careful. I think it's extremely difficult to, leave our personal opinion at the door, but we should be making every effort we can, much like this policy says, to really take a perspective of viewpoints and opinions. We don't want to teach kids what to think. We want to teach them how to think. And so I think in order to do that, we do have to offer a variety of perspectives and viewpoints and opinions around issues. And I'm going to go back to what I started saying at the beginning. I've worked with this board for a long time, and I think the board values, appreciates, and wants all of our kids to be engaged in talking about issues that are impacting the world around them. And we expect that out of our kids. We expect it out of our educators to be talking about those things so that they can walk across the stage and be prepared to enter a world where they can be a force for change, however they see fit to be a force for that change in the world. And so I would recommend that we do kind of using that 4513 policy as kind of the guiding document here, because it's already written in and we have already approved this as a guidance for selection of material, would be to develop an administrative regulation that we could then craft much with the same language that would be annually shared with our educators, just as an annual reminder of making sure that we are the importance of leaving personal bias at the door, being neutral in terms of our viewpoints, and certainly looking at a variety of perspectives. And so if the board is acceptable to that approach, I have no problem whatsoever using that as a guideline and drafting up an administrative regulation that would be annually shared with our faculty and staff that reiterates and addresses that. I think to Mr. Tuttle's point, now more than ever, it's really important recognizing that our students come from a wide variety of backgrounds and different beliefs, that it's okay to disagree with others, but we need to make sure and ensure that a wide perspective of viewpoints is being discussed. And our own personal opinion and viewpoint we need to be very careful that we're not interjecting that and trying to get kids to think and feel the way we do. Even if we are passionate about something, I think it's important that we have to recognize the role we play as educators to be very careful about that. So that would be my game plan moving forward. There really isn't a policy in an instructional line anywhere that dictates that. It is buried in library materials. But I think we have other administrative regulations that we do provide to teachers annually as reminders and updates in terms of things that they need to do, that we can reiterate that on an annual basis. So I can draft something up, share it with the board. You can take a look at it. Administrative regulations you don't necessarily have to approve, but I think in this situation, I would value running that by the board for perspective and feedback on that before we adopt it as an admin regulation. So if that's satisfactory to you, Mr. Tuttle, and the rest of the board, that's the direction I would recommend we take on that.
Any comments from the board on Mr. Chevier's recommendation?
So
hold on one second. I can't tell who was in first. So it was one of the mics. Let's go with Mike Charsky by alphabetical order.
Okay. No, I was just going to say that listening to the 6 points, I think it goes in the direction of our conversation a couple of weeks ago. Obviously, it's something we'd like to look at. So I think it's worth you going ahead and drafting that out. I'd like to see those 6 points. It sounded to me they're not restrictive, and it still gives everyone the flexibility that we were talking about a couple of weeks ago. So yeah, I'd like to see us go forward with that.
Thank you. Mr. Heiser?
I was just going to say that what Jason proposed seemed reasonable, and I was in support of it.
Okay. Yeah, the discussion we had, I agree. It is along the lines, I think, of what the vast majority of the board was looking at. We don't want to be restrictive. We do want them to be critical thinkers. We do want them to think about the world they're in. We do want them to take a stand for what they believe in. But we also understand that, you do need to be considerate of other viewpoints, and certainly we need to teach all the viewpoints. I do have one question on the student expression part of it. I think we've covered the divisive topic sort of part of it, but
Yep. So in terms of student expression, it's certainly we start to walk a fine line. I would be lying if I said I didn't reach out to legal counsel to get some guidance on the balance between what's a First Amendment right of our students to have free speech. What I would recommend we do is certainly take a look, because if we're in let's just say debate club, right? I'm going to be expected to take a viewpoint and a stance and be able to articulate that publicly. But I think we do have opportunities where students might be up in front of a group and have the opportunity to speak. And when we start to take a look at our ability, we have, I think, a policy that really is very clear in terms of our ability to limit speech with the right parameters and guidance provided to students ahead of time. So I think one of the things that I'll work with the building principals on, I mean, it's probably more of a secondary issue than it is more of an elementary issue. We can start to build that foundation at the elementary school, but I would think where it's appropriate, where students have the opportunity to be up and to write speeches, let's say, and address an audience, where it is appropriate, we should be giving, proper guidance for our students in terms of what's expected to, just be mindful that anytime we have the opportunity to address a large group and a large audience, that we are doing so in such a manner where we are, not being one-sided in terms of the viewpoint, not being controversial, but delivering a message that is appropriate to the group. So I know in some of the opportunities that we've had the opportunity to kind of reflect on a little bit, we have always, typically had, our students are great kids that are involved in the world around them, and they, we certainly have no doubt by the time they walk across the stage, kids are learning about who they are, have formulated opinions on the world around them, and want to share that perspective. We certainly want to make sure that we are being mindful that often when we speak, if we are speaking on behalf of a group or a class, that we should be representing the entire group or the entire class, the entire club, whatever that might be, and recognize that it's diverse. So I think much like what we can do for the admin regulation on that end, Jackie and I will need to do some work probably collectively together and just kind of look at some general parameters that we would want to provide to our faculty to guide students in their speeches prior to submitting speeches in which they're able to develop those. And my understanding is, with the right guidelines in place and expectations, if after a thorough review we do feel that maybe part of that is not appropriate, it would give us the ability to then, censor that speech or work with that student to change it. If minus the guidelines and absent of those, we run the risk of violating their First Amendment right. We want to just be careful that we don't do that. So I think it's a simple solution. We don't want to shut anybody down, but I think being clear on our expectations for our students and what it is they're able to say and do when they have an audience becomes really important in the process. So we can do the same in etching out some guidelines and parameters that we can use for student speeches in a public forum as well. So that would be my recommendation on that piece as well.
Great. I think that's where we'd like to go as a board in discussions with board members and with council. So in our time here, I don't think we've really had to worry about that much. But like you say, these days things are a little different. So I think we just like to be ahead of the game instead of catching up. Any last comments from the board on the way forward as far as our policies are concerned in that nature? Okay, see no comments. We will move into section 7. Section 7 is finance. It is lengthy. We have items A through J. There's report, claims auditors report, student activity report. We have both tax warrants for Skodak and for Stuyvesant to approve. We have the approval for the initial Questar contract for the cooperative education services for next year or this coming year. We also have the approval of resolution to transfer funds from the reserves. Serial bond resolution for the buses. The new pilot for the solar farm going in on Paul Road. And we have some acknowledgement of donations, which I think I'm gonna go ahead and read them because I think it's important to air it. We have 3 of them. One from the Everson family for the John Kinsley scholarship. One for the wrestling program from Anne Marie O'Neill, and one to the Pat Wood backpack from Capcom FCU. It's important to acknowledge those donations. And last but not least, a approval to for the revision of the 2021 tax rates, which we got briefed on earlier. So is there a motion to move finance section A to J?
So moved.
Thank you, Mike. We have a second.
Second.
I think that was Mike as well. Thank you, Mike. Is there any discussion on sections A through J? Okay, if there are no discussions, then all those in favor of moving item 7A through J, say aye. Mr. Charsky?
Aye.
Mr. Heiser?
Aye.
Mr. Hersey?
Aye.
Mrs. Palmer?
Aye.
Mr. Peter?
Aye.
My vote is aye. And Mrs. Jurista? Need you to unmute. Sorry. There we go. Got it. Thank you. Thank you. That motion moved 7A through J. Section 8, other action. We have approval of recommendation of District Committee on Special Ed and the approval of the safety plan, which we discussed last month or last meeting. It's gone through its 30-day public what is the word I'm looking for? I'm missing.
Comment?
Public comment. There we go. Thank you. So is there a motion to move A, 8, and B?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Mike. Shelley, you pick which mic you want to say. Put down. Any discussion on A, 8, A, and B? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Mr. Charsky?
Aye.
Mr. Heiser?
Aye.
Mr. Hersey? Mrs. Palmer?
Aye.
Mr. Peter?
Aye.
My vote is aye. And Mrs. Jurista?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes. Section 9, resignations and appointments. So we've got staffing actions to approve. We do have a hire of a new teacher for, did I get there before that? Hang on.
Business and CTE.
Thank you, Mary. Business and CTE. Why? Yeah, I have that. Oh, it's because I'm in the wrong section. All right, so staffing appointments, we have we have a resignation of a TA. We have Mrs. Mayer's appointment to her new position. We have a substitute for. We also have the appointment of the CTE teacher. We do have an approval of an absence of leave and appointment of a part-time teacher. So sections 9A through D. Is there a motion to move?
So
So
moved. Oh, second. Take your pick.
Mary moved. Mike Charsky, second. Do we have any discussion on 9A through D? If there's no discussion, all those in favor, please say aye. Mr. Charsky,
Aye.
Mr. Heiser,
Aye.
Mr. Hersey, Mrs. Palmer,
Aye.
Mr. Peter.
Aye.
My vote is aye. Mrs. Jurista,
Aye.
motion passes. Okay, thank you. At this time, we're going to move into our second period of public comment. Again, for the public that is out there, we're going to try doing the *3 to see if that puts up your hand and lets me know that you'd like to speak, and then I will unmute you.
Mr. Tuttle, while you're doing that, I just want to make mention that Rochelle Obi, who you
I missed that.
as our new teacher, is online and listening, and I think she would love to be in person as we welcome her to the Skodak community, but we'll do it virtually. So Rochelle, thanks for hanging in for this long meeting, but congratulations.
Yeah.
Happy to welcome you to the team.
Finally, 9 o'clock at night.
We make you earn it in Skodak. Well, my apologies for not mentioning your name specifically, but that's why Mr. Chevier is here to pick up for me when I slack off.
It's fine. I was just impatiently waiting since 6 o'clock. No big deal. It's all good.
All right. Well, welcome to Skodak. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I hope the *3 is working because I don't know. If one person would press *3, that'd be great.
I did test it a little while ago. It works. *3 puts your hand up.
Excellent. Thank you, Shelly.
Yeah.
Tim's got his hand
I
up.
see Tim's up. So Tim, you have the floor.
Thanks. I'm on my computer. I actually found the hand up signal on the very side of the screen. I just wanted to welcome Rochelle as well. Rochelle, my name is Ryan. I'm the president of the union. We'll be in touch to hear about all their issues. We'll get together at some point, probably virtually. Feel free if you need any information. My email is tryan@kodak with all the other stuff. I guess the question on the change in the J or section 7J, is that just a clerical issue? Is that another item?
I didn't catch that, Tim. Sorry. Could you say that again?
Yeah, in section 7J, why was there changes in rates?
Professional hourly rate, curriculum development changed. Go ahead, Shelley.
When Jill Filkins was calculating the professional hourly rate, she just did it wrong, so we had to revise it to the proper one for this year. Right. The different salary.
Oh, so it was the master's and she used the master's schedule and
I don't know exactly what she did. I just know that she told me that the calculation was wrong. That's why we had to correct it.
Okay, thanks.
We can look into that and follow up with you, Tim, if you'd like.
Not a big thing, just wondering why.
All right, thank you, Tim. Okay, I see no other hands up, so I'm going to go ahead and close public comment. And after action, is the mic open?
Yeah, that was me. Sorry.
That's all right. Action items. I don't.
Admin regulations. That's the action that I have to develop both of those and share them with the board. Let's follow up.
Yes.
That's it. That's all I have. And the follow up with Mr. Ryan, but I'll do that. Doesn't need to be an action item thing. We'll follow up with it.
Very good.
Answer. Yep.
Okay. Perfect. Anything else from the board? Okay. The crickets tell me there's not. So With no further business, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for coming, and we will see you on the 20th. And I'll get emails out to you beforehand. Okay?
Thank you. Great.
All right. Thank you. Have a good night.
Good night.
Can you,
I'm going to pass
can
it
you
back
stop
to
the
you.
recording now?
Can I? I can. Okay, it stopped.
Thank you.
I think.
Thank,
Hold on. It's not stopping.